Okay, so we will make a start for our afternoon session, which begins with our speaker, Right Honourable Darren Jones MP, who's sitting here with us. Just to remind you of his role, he's a Member of Parliament for Bristol North West, the very constituency he grew up in. As he noted in his maiden speech in Parliament in 2017, he was the first Darren to be elected to the House of Commons. A trendsetter, because two more Darrens have since been elected.
Absolutely, yeah, very good.
So prior to entering Parliament, Darren trained as a solicitor, specialising in technology law, and so as from the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, that's dear to my heart. Darren's parliamentary career gained national prominence as chair of the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee, leading the committee's work on high-profile issues, including leadership of Royal Mail, post office scandal, and the unionisation of Amazon. It was for this work Darren was named Inquisitor of the Year at the 2023 Spectators Parliamentarian of the Year Awards. Following Labour's victory at the 2024 general election, Darren was appointed as Chief Secretary to the Treasury by the Prime Minister, and in September 2025 he was appointed as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. As well as supporting the Prime Minister's priorities, Darren is also the Cabinet Minister responsible for civil service reform. So I welcome Darren. Please also join me in welcoming him, and he will be talking to us and then the opportunity for questions. Great. Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you. I was told that the name Darren was only popular for a very short window in, I think, the mid to late 80s. And the only other name that was less popular and is dying out at a quicker speed is Nigel. Which I believe to be the case. So look, thank you. It's great to be with you here this afternoon to spend some time with you, not least given because it's been a quiet week in Westminster, so it's been something to look forward to. And look, even if it had been a busy, bustling week in the Westminster bubble, I of course wanted to take the time anyway to come and spend some time with you, to thank you for your service and all of your work, and to talk a little bit more about some of the plans that I and the government have that we're rolling out in support of you to help us to support delivery for the public. And I know it's been a busy week, and I know that for your General Secretary Dave, internal Labour Party matters are probably not what he or any of you have been focused on. But of course the event which I understand really matters to him, I've been told, is apparently not this conference, not even his birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to Dave. Oh, there was one clap, that was great. Nice to see your wife in the audience there, Dave, it's great. Actually, yes. But apparently Partick Thistle have been playing in the Scottish Premiership playoffs. And I have to confess that, like probably everyone else in the room, and indeed the rest of the world, my knowledge of Partick Thistle was limited before writing this joke. And so limited, in fact, that it was written by one of my team, who's the only other Jags fan in SW1. To be honest, when I first read this speech, I asked the question, who's Patrick Thistle? And I think that's an even worse joke than Billy Connolly's Partick Thistle Nil, him thinking that was their name for most of his life. But we should get to serious business, because I really do value the opportunity to be with you today. I should just say, perhaps given the health-shaped elephant in the room, you wouldn't have failed to see the news in the last hour. Obviously I disagree with Wes Streeting's decision to leave the government in the way he has. But I want to make one important point, which is that political disruption such as that and of the last couple of hours, these attempts from some parts of my party to destabilise the work of government are obviously deeply frustrating for us as politicians, but I know they're also deeply frustrating for all of you, because it means that we're having to deal with those issues and not get on with the day-to-day work. But I just want to make a promise to you from the Prime Minister, from the Cabinet, from ministers across government, that we are very clear about what the public expects from us, and that is what we are getting up and coming into the office to do every single day, and we will continue to do just that. Now, whether on the political or civil service side of government, we all know that it is often our work which enables the public to live healthy, prosperous and safe lives in communities right across the United Kingdom. And we know that the public rightly demand a lot of us. They rightly expect that the political promises that I and my political colleagues make turn into actual delivery and real change in their lives. And together, we have, in the last 2 years, had some significant successes. We've scrapped the 2-child limit, helping to lift over 500,000 children in this country out of poverty. We've delivered the Employment Rights Act, introducing guaranteed hours and reasonable notice for cancelled shifts for workers. NHS waiting lists in England are at their lowest level in 3 years, and we've put 3,000 extra neighbourhood police officers on our streets 2 months faster than we had planned to do so. But despite those successes, and many others, it's clear from the public that they don't believe the status quo is working well enough for them. They don't feel that change is yet real enough in their lives in a way that can inspire a little bit more hope and optimism that tomorrow can be better than today. And we should be honest that some of their criticisms are true. The outcomes that we often declare in Westminster as targets in policy papers or strategies, or in the processes that we work through in Parliament or in Whitehall, are too often too far away from the lives that people lead when they walk down their street or visit their GP, to the weekly household budget. So to renew trust in politics and our democratic institutions and the values that we all care about, we have to find ways to be faster at delivering and showing, as well as telling the public, the change that is happening and how it is attributable to your work and the political leadership that our government is providing. So the question is, why do the public have these concerns, and what do we think some of the problems may be? And I want to start by saying that it is one that is shared between us, because I think it applies to both the civil service as an institution, to you as civil servants, and to us as politicians. Firstly, too often, policy development, as important as it is, trumps delivery. Delivery often feels too far away, with a delivery partner or an arm's-length body or a councillor or a mayor, too distant from those of us that work here in the centre. And this is in part, I think, a direct consequence of catering for a fast-moving media cycle here in London, which incentivises headlines and press releases and announcements, and doesn't give or create enough space for us to tell the story of change in a way that connects with the public. The other issue that I've been trying to help with is to deal with the fact that there are far too many layers of bureaucracy between decisions made by ministers and those of you that get to deliver that change on the front line. As Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, one of my jobs that the Prime Minister gave me last September was to try to help with this disconnect at the centre of government, and then to think about how we roll that out across government and ultimately to the voting public. My job was to try and bring number 10 and the Cabinet Office closer together so that they were more integrated, to ensure that the full heft of my department, the Cabinet Office, was deployed as closely as possible to the political leadership provided in Downing Street. And as Chief Secretary to the Treasury before that, I set up a programme to slash the layers upon layers of bureaucracy needed to make an actual decision in government. You will all know far better than me from actually doing it how often you need to go to another committee or another layer of the government to get a decision or approval from someone in the management structures, to all the way up through the senior civil service to ministers from different departments. And I know that it frustrates many of you because that takes up more time than actually being able to get on with actual delivery. And so I wanted to reduce those requirements for approvals and give you more authority to be able to act. And this was part of a plan to help you as civil servants to move fast and fix things. This streamlined approach went live last month, giving those closer to real decision-making more freedom and autonomy in return for more accountability. I hope that you may have seen this in practice already, and if you haven't, you should ask questions about it in your department. We've also created a new delivery unit in number 10, properly integrated with Cabinet Office teams to turbocharge that work and to help departments not to drive accountability in a kind of Ofsted way, but to say where there is a priority for the public and the government, how do we come in and help you to unlock the barriers that you're facing to get the job done? And we're also working to modernise our government communication service, to focus less on daily announcements and more on the process of delivery and the real impact on people's lives. Not just chasing the next grid slot, but unearthing the stories of people whose lives have been changed by this government and your work. So we are investing in digital communications and creativity to talk to people where they are, not where they used to be in the old legacy media. The milestones I've already talked about across the cost of living, NHS, policing, and others show that we are delivering real change to lots of communities across the country. But if people are not feeling that change or seeing it, if they don't believe us, then they will think we're not going far enough. And this is where I think the political message I have is really important for all of us, even though we have very different roles. Because if we fail to get this right in the years ahead, the consequences are greater than simply a minister or a government being out of office. Because if our service to the public isn't something that they value and see as a means of improving their lives, then the very democratic institutions in which we all work under are, I'm afraid, increasingly under threat. To be blunt, based on their policy statements, Nigel Farage and Reform want to tear these institutions down. Now, this isn't a party political point, it's just a statement of facts based on their policy prescriptions. So we should believe them when they say that they want to turn our professional, apolitical civil service, one of the foundations of Whitehall and our democracy, into a more extreme political operation based on models seen in other countries around the world. This is not just about protecting the status quo, this is about recognizing that our democratic values, lived and embodied within the institutions in which we work with appropriate checks and balances and accountability, have for hundreds of years been the bedrock of our stability and our democracy. But if we can't show the public that these institutions are meeting the challenges of the modern age and delivering the change in their lives that they're voting for, it all becomes under threat. So we have a shared objective to get this right over the years ahead. And so I want the civil service to prize delivery, for example, or rather real-world change, as much as policy expertise. Now, I know earlier Dave said that ministerial turnover is one of the main blockers to that. This was written before a minister resigned. And it says here I couldn't agree more. And I couldn't change the page, which is why the Prime Minister's been clear that he is not going to be distracted by the events of the last couple of days. He will be cracking on with the job at hand, but with a greater urgency that the public fairly demands. That's a political requirement from the Prime Minister, but it's a job that all of us have to step up into. Now, for that to happen, incentives, support, training, and accountability matters, for you and for me. That's why in January, I announced all permanent secretaries would be set key performance indicators based on their Secretary of State's and the Prime Minister's priorities. This was the first of many steps I set in motion to build a cultural, not just a structural change to help our system to deliver. It's also why the number 10 delivery unit is making sure that we get the basics right, which governments have often ignored for too long, such as making sure that there is one source of truth between departments in how we measure success. And an example of that is our new shared intelligence platform, shared between departments and the number 10 delivery unit, where we have an agreed shared view of our priorities, our progress against those priorities, where we're coming up against problems, and then what we can do together to fix them. And by extending this delivery expertise across Whitehall, as well as integrating it properly in the centre of government, we're hoping to bring departments and the centre, as well as civil servants and ministers, closer together. Because as a minister, too often I have found that if I want to get something done, I have to get the right people in the room every week to ask for an update and ensure there is hard accountability. But you can only do that on so many issues at a time. So today, I'm announcing that every department across Whitehall will be setting up a delivery team led by a top civil servant to do that work on behalf of ministers and permanent secretaries. Some departments have models already, some don't. There won't be a one-size-fits-all requirement from the centre, but we have best practice shared between departments about how a senior-led delivery unit can help to identify barriers and escalate to ministers and to number 10 the issues that are needed to be unblocked in order to progress. Because currently the delivery capacity and capability across departments is inconsistent, which can often lead to things like significant sums on external consultancy. I want to build that capacity with you in-house, within the civil service and across our departments. I will also be working with secretaries of state and ministers of state to bring in people with experience delivering frontline public services or in business into their private offices to scrutinize the pace and ambition of departmental delivery plans. This could involve dedicated non-executive directors on our departmental boards, but also the integration of new delivery advisors into the private offices of secretaries of state and ministers of state. As a minister, I've also found that too often getting stuff done in practical, straightforward ways can be stifled by constitutional silos that incentivize departments to operate as independent entities, often defending their own interests or trying to defend their position against a different view in a different department within Whitehall. So I was delighted to work with the Cabinet Secretary to secure in the King's speech yesterday a commitment to review potential legislative changes to allow a more one-team approach across the civil service, which instead incentivizes delivery in the public interest as well as rebuilding trust in government. This review will look at delivery, innovation, and productivity, while also safeguarding the impartiality and core values of the service. And we reserve the right to legislate to build a governance model in our civil service that meets the challenges of modern Britain. Because it's only when we are 100% on the same page with each other, when we have the same priorities, sharing the same need to deliver for the public, and the same understanding of the risks we may need to take to succeed, that the relationship between ministers and civil servants and between departments can be one of complete trust. As Dave rightly raised earlier, that is a relationship to which I want all of us to aspire, because a strong, effective civil service is the foundation for democracy and effective institutions that keep the British people safe, healthy, and prosperous. As I said in January, I also want to change how we incentivize and reward that success. That is why, alongside our new system of KPIs, I have changed the rules around senior civil service pay and rewards. This month, we will be publishing our response to the Senior Salary Review Body's recommendations on pay and progression, on which I'm grateful to FDA colleagues for their continued engagement. We will be awarding higher but fewer bonuses to those exceptional civil servants who do delivery, innovation, and go above and beyond for the public. And I'm determined that we give civil servants what they need to make that mark. So to make it easier to deliver and to innovate, I announced in January that I would be making available a new delivery model based on the vaccine task force to break through traditional restraints on the public sector to deliver for the public, with faster decision-making, ministerial risk-sharing, the ability to hire quickly and bring in external expertise, and hire delegated spending authorities. I'm delighted to confirm that we have started our first 2 pilots of these task forces. One will improve data sharing across the criminal justice system, helping probation officers better monitor and rehabilitate offenders in the community, with work taking place between the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office. And a second will help battle the epidemic of violence against women and girls, which we're seeing across the country, by working to improve and speed up the procurement of support services in communities across the country. And as the FDA's Adopt, Innovate and Transform report highlights, we must seize the promise of technology to find better ways of doing things too, to not be content with the same processes we have always relied upon. The number 10 Innovation Fellows have been a fantastic case in point. If you're not familiar with them, fellows are recruited through a highly competitive process based on problem solving and coding with a success rate of just 0.7%, bringing in the best and brightest in data science and AI from the likes of CERN, NASA, and Y Combinator for a tour of duty in the public service. They have been deployed across departments to tackle problems in a new and innovative way. An example of which is in the Ministry of Justice, where a fellow has been working alongside prison staff on the front line. He came from San Francisco, we sent him to a prison. To build bespoke AI tools that automate the parts of their job that can be automated with the consent of those prison officers, freeing up hours of their time to do what only prison officers can do whilst also making the prisons and the prison officers safer in the process. But this approach to innovation shouldn't be confined to particular projects or particular fellows. I want this approach to innovation and new technology to be available to each and every one of you. And so you will have noted that I previously announced the establishment of the new National School of Government and Public Services. And today, I'm proud to announce that all civil servants will be offered AI training through that school, with real AI adoption targets set for departments at permanent secretary level. Because adopting artificial intelligence and better technology is not about replacing jobs, but it's about recognizing that those of us who seize it and use it to our advantage will become more productive and more successful. I'm also delighted to be working with the Cabinet Secretary to support the Future Civil Service Programme, the success for which will be defined by a culture of excellence focused on getting stuff done and delivering outcomes, changing how we work by learning from the best, and creating the pride that comes from high performance. To finish, I just want to say that we cannot continue with the legacy state. In places, from all of our experience, it feeling perhaps disjointed or overworked or under-resourced. And after years of cuts to public investment and a lack of support for innovation, you know better than me that we need to do more to help you to succeed. In its place, we need to build a more modern, a more nimble, a more digital organization, where technology can help us do the heavy lifting, where we feel closer together, where we work as one team in service to the public, freeing you to focus on your interactions, where your expertise is most needed, and having a closer relationship with citizens who rely on us in their times of need. Our job as ministers is to give you that authority, that mandate, that training, that support, the tools that you need to succeed, so that together, in the face of rising populism and challenge to our democratic values and a demand from the public that we go further and do better, we can come together and build a Britain that is richer, fairer, and stronger. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Darren, and it's obviously a great honour that we get a couple of announcements as part of that speech, so thank you. I have promised the first question to the General Secretary. I think that's only fair, and then we will open up the floor, so please do think about what you'd like to ask in due course, and roving mics will be available. Thank you.
Partick Thistle and our AI report, so well done on that. A true politician's speech. But I want to take you back to the stuff you mentioned about your speech in January about move fast and fix things. And when you were talking about the task force, I was there for that speech, and you talked about civil servants taking risks. And at the Q&A at the end, I said to you, ministers always say they want civil servants to take risks. But the reality for many civil servants is that those risks are not shared, and that when something goes wrong, they get the blame. And you spoke passionately, like you did there, and I think I believed you when you said it, about the joint endeavour, and this needs to be a joint sharing of risks. I just wonder, from then till now, how you feel civil servants might feel given the events of the last few weeks, about whether that really is the case, and whether some of those words about risk-taking and blame will feel a little hollow, given what's happened to some of the most senior civil servants in the UK.
Thank you, Dave. It would obviously not be appropriate for me to talk about Ollie Robbins in specific terms, although I've known Ollie Robbins for a little while, and he always seemed to be a fantastic civil servant. And so I thank him for his service. And I know it was a difficult period of time over the decision that was taken around the vetting process for Peter Mandelson, which also highlighted some process issues we needed to fix as well. I suppose my reflection, without getting into the specific details, is that we do, as ministers, want civil servants to take more risk, but it has to be a shared risk, and that means we need to know about it. And I suppose that's the slight difference between the case implied in your question and what I've been saying. And what in practice does that look like? Sometimes I worry when I get submissions as a Secretary of State that documents have gone through so many checks and approvals that every last risk has been shaved off by the time it gets to me. I also worry a bit, and I know the Attorney General's looking at this, that you might always get medium legal risk, therefore best not to. I don't mind taking more risk if it means we're delivering things for the public and innovating. It's also relevant to procurement decisions on the level of things like indemnity insurance, new companies, innovative companies maybe helping us to deliver our outcomes. And so I kind of reiterate what I said in January and today. It was genuine, because if we are not willing to try new things or to take risks together, we are in effect continuing the status quo which the public has told us they're not overly pleased with. So my kind of ask really is for you to not discount risk in your work, but actually, if you think it's the way to get something done, to highlight it and to ask, if you're not allowed, to put it in front of the minister and have a conversation with them about it. Because I'm pretty sure that most ministers, in most circumstances, we're accountable to Parliament, we're not going to be reckless. But if there's a shared level of risk about delivering for the public, we're probably more likely than maybe our institutional assumptions think we are likely to say, let's crack on and give it a go.